Over the last couple of weeks, we've been looking at some really good aspects of cycling in Perth. Some of the good infrastructure, the nice paths, etc. Well, I don't want you to think it's some cycling nirvana. It's not by any means. Whilst there's some really good stuff, there's also quite a bit of stuff which is very ordinary. And what we're going to look at now is some of the stuff that ranges from pretty ordinary to really rubbish. Well, the end of path strikes once again. It's coming along this lovely path over here. No warning signage, absolutely nothing, and suddenly, bam, it just finishes right there at this construction fence. Bugger, I know where it's supposed to go, but yeah, a few people followed me and we're all a little bit surprised by it. So yeah, I don't know why they didn't close it off earlier on, but good thing we didn't go crashing into that at night. So I'm at the fork in the road, and you can see some people up there trying to work out where they're supposed to go. And that's the path, that's the dead end behind me there. And as you can see, it's not closed off, there's no signage on the trees, there's absolutely nothing to say, hey, that path finishes 100 metres up there, it's just bam. And you'd think it'd be some detour signage to send you up here, where these guys are looking at the map and figuring out where the hell to go next, which is exactly what I'm doing now. Well, I'm now on the other side of the construction work, which led to a dead end, and the signage over here, and quite a bit of it. Of course, it says use other footpath. Well, we want to go that way, and the footpath goes that way, and there is no footpath over there. So yeah, just like Sydney, some of these construction people don't think through their signage, don't think through their detour routes, and don't check on it. I think I got an example here of path confusion. So I came riding up here on this road, which is red asphalt, and over here there's a concrete path. And I was riding on the road rather than the path, because I thought, well, obviously that's a pedestrian path, and this kind of looks very cycly because everything these days is red, and that's not red, so I should be over here. Then, you can see this, but the path goes around over there, and then it pops out and crosses the road. And I was thinking, well, should I be going straight along here, continuing along the road, or should I be turning right on the path? And you can see that tree there. Well, let's just go over and have a look at what's behind that tree. Forgive my lousy camera work. So if you're a lost and confused cyclist like me, you ride along and you think, should I be going down there? And I rode right past here, and I failed to see the sign. And it wasn't until I got to about here I went, oh. Oh, okay. That's a bike sign, and that's a bike path, which means that's a bike path too. Well, let's follow that bike path and see where it takes us. As a dog owner, I've got to say I really do like this idea. I think it's very sensible, and they've got these signs all the way along the path delineating which side's on lead and off lead, so the path becomes the dividing line, which makes a lot of sense. Now, just to be sure that this is in fact a cycle path, yeah, that sign up there says ring your bell, blah blah blah, so this thing is indeed a shared path. Well, let's see what happens to it. Well, that's impressive. It's a nice big sign you can actually read. That's a good size. It's made out of metal. Okay, right, enough of that. We don't want your poop. Now I think this is important. So I just rode along this path here, which, as we can see from these signs, is a bike path, and I'm going to take this right hand leg of it. Snake seen in the area, yeah, great. And we're going to go up here and just watch this, watch what this path turns into. Now, cynical me says, well, have a look at this path. It's concrete slabs, it's old. I mean, it's good there's a path here, but it's certainly not up to current construction standards. And a few people have said to me, when I asked why Cottesloe, etc., Netherlands has such good bike paths, I said, oh, it's a marginal seat. It was Colin Barnett's seat, the previous Liberal Premier, which possibly says, if you want to have good bike infrastructure, vote in a Liberal and make sure they become the leader of the state. Otherwise you end up with stuff like this, which I have to say is still heaps better than what a lot of Sydney has got. But by Perth standards, it's pretty miserable at the moment. Now, when I first rode onto this path from that direction, I got to about this point here and I thought, you've got to be kidding, this is no longer a bike path. and this is just it's a narrow track, it's one step above mud, and back around there the path was barely wider than my handlebars. Then I got to the other end and saw those signs and found, well, yeah, I am actually on a proper path. Let's go that way and see what it turns into. Hey mate. Hello. How you doing? Well, if you're going to ride in a dog area, you've got to expect to see some dogs. Anyway, look, it's potholes, roots. I hope I can do this one-handed without crashing. And it's, yeah, big roots, really chopped up. I guess the grass has just been encroaching over the years, and it's broken up the edges and it's shrunk quite considerably. I think it's probably, well, I'd have to say it's under 1 metre wide in places. And you know, maybe if you came along here with a sweeper and took all the stuff off the edges and some edge trimmers, it might widen out a bit. Yeah, I certainly got a big shock when I rode onto this path and well, saw what it turned into, because on this section, and look at that, looks like completely normal bike path. That's what, nearly 2 metres wide, looks pretty good, except in places, you know, where the leaf litter narrows it down. Okay, I'd better put the camera away. Now this is an unusual feature I've only come across in this particular suburb, and that's pedestrian only paths, and there's a sign just a little bit further up there that also says pedestrians only. I found these things are really hard to see in this light. The red paint doesn't stand out at all, and I've actually ridden onto a few of these paths and gone, oops, shouldn't be here, and had to do a U-turn and go back. It seems kind of strange that it's no bikes, but up there's bike racks. What can we learn from this? The first thing is that the terrible management of road detours seems to be a universal problem. The people who are being paid to put up detour signs certainly aren't being paid to think. The second is that there is a lot of inconsistency in path construction due to a multitude of standards up until recently, or a complete absence of standards. Once you get away from the new paths that have been built in the last 10 years or so, it becomes hard to tell what's a bike path and what isn't. You pretty much need a degree in deciphering path visuals, for want of a better term. For anyone who has ridden around the Bay Run or along the Cooks River, this shouldn't be a big surprise. The only consistent thing about those routes is the total inconsistency of path colours, surfaces and designs. However, at least the Cooks River flows together as one long path. You might go from Pebble Creek to asphalt to concrete in the space of 1 kilometre, but at least all those sections are joined together, and you don't really need signs pointing you from one bit of path to the next. That's not the case over here in Perth. I've ridden on some very disjointed paths which have plenty of missing links, and there is no obvious signage pointing where to go once you reach the end of each section. Wayfinding signage is crucial. Council seem to be happy to create maps showing all their bike routes and sticking it on their internet site, but are less keen on climbing ladders and nailing wayfinding signage to poles, or painting wayfinding stencils on roads and paths. My experience from over here is that we tend to forget how much newcomers need wayfinding signage. In short, it's a lot easier to work out where you're going by reading the path instead of trying to read tiny little signs stuck on poles up in the sky.